What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at my new Fender Custom Shop 1960 Stratocaster. Now, I've been chasing for the perfect Stratocaster for as long as I can remember, and even though I'm primarily a Les Paul kind of guy, I have always held Strats really close to my heart. My first guitar ever was a Stratocaster copy made by Yamaha that my father bought me back when I was around 14 years old, I believe. And it wasn't a really great guitar, but I learned a lot of chords with it, and funny enough, it was the guitar that I actually learned a lot of the songs that I'm now covering 20 odd years later in this channel. So throughout the years, I have owned a few Strats, but none of them have ever felt right. So in the end, I just ended up selling them and buying more Les Pauls. But just like a Telecaster or a Les Paul, Stratocasters have a very unique sound. No matter if you put a humbucker in the bridge or just keep your single coils, the spank and dynamics you get out of a Strat are pretty much unmistakable. And my quest to own the perfect Strat continued. Now, my biggest problem with Strats has always been wanting them to sound like a Strat, but also feel like a Les Paul. And most USA Strats and even some of the custom shop models that you find on the stores are very limited to the build options that come in stock and have never felt right to me. So what does a borderline irresponsible adult does when he wants his dream Stratocaster? Well, he orders one from the Fender custom shop to his exact specs. So now enter my dream Stratocaster. This thing is a work of art. I'm so proud and lucky to finally own this perfect instrument. I just really can't express how happy I am. So big shout out to Teddy Gordon from Making Music out of Chicago for making sure the specs were correct and pretty much spend the time to go into detail of the whole custom shop ordering process. Teddy was super professional, and I would definitely recommend you guys to check out his store, Making Music out of Chicago. So just like the theme of this channel, I really wanted to take a little bit of that 90s nostalgia and incorporate that into this build and sort of pay homage to an era that I'm super fond of. So let's start with the obvious, which is the color. The nitro finish is Graffiti Yellow, which happens to be one of the best colors on a Fender, period. Obviously the inspiration came from Tom DeLonge's signature yellow Strat from the late 90s, early 2000s, which I've always loved. The competition stripe is, in my opinion, looks amazing on any Strat. The finish is called Midnight Wine, and it was a color seen in a lot of Stratocasters in the 90s. So I thought both colors really complemented each other really well as tie the whole 90s theme together. Now, Being a fan of vintage guitars with a modern twist, I wanted certain things to remain traditional to that year. This guitar is modeled after an early 1960s Stratocaster. So you have your rosewood fretboard, which is very common on a lot of the 60s Fender guitars of that era. A two-piece alder body. The weight on this thing is great. It's probably about 7 pounds, so it's very lightweight and comfortable. The neck, which was very important for me, is modeled after a 1952 U-shaped Telecaster neck. So basically a big old chunk of maple. It measures at 0.990 in the first fret all the way down to the 12th, so basically a baseball bat. And this is something I've never seen on a Strat. Typically, most of them have a more modern C-shape, which to me, it's a little bit too thin. So having a chunky neck like this really reminds me of my Les Paul, so to me, it just feels great. Triple flame maple. Again, I'm a huge fan of aesthetics, and nothing looks nicer than a beautiful piece of flame maple wood. As you can see, the flame pretty much runs all the way from the headstock all the way down, so it's a beautiful neck, just a piece of work by the custom shop. The neck radius is 9.5 as opposed to the traditional 7.5 of a vintage Fender, and this helps a lot with bends and gives you a flatter feel. Vintage fret wire, basically small and narrow. I really love the feel of these frets. Again, they remind me a lot of my 58 reissue Les Paul, so I really wanted the small frets. Another modern feature are the thrust rod being on the headstock as opposed to the butt of the neck, like most vintage Fenders. And this just makes setups a lot easier. So I decided to go with that, and also clay dots, so to keep it period correct. I really love the Relic job Fender does on their guitars, so I opted to go for the Journeyman Relic, which is sort of a medium in terms of wear. Basically a guitar that's been played throughout the years in gigs and whatnot, but never toured or abused. So you got nice spiderweb nitro checking all around the body, a few dents here and there, and it's just perfect and not really over the top. As far as the electronics, I obviously needed a humbucker in the bridge and the 2 single coils. So the bridge is a Seymour Duncan Pearly Gates, and I went with this model as opposed to the more common JB because I used to love how they sounded on my old 2000 Fender double fast Strat I had back in the day. They're not as high output as a JB and a little bit less harsh and trebly to my ears, which I think really complements this guitar really well. The middle and neck position single coils are custom hand wound by John Cruz, and they just sound fantastic. You have a 5-position switch for more tonal options, a standard 3-knob configuration, a hardtail vintage bridge. This was big for me. Most Fender Strats obviously come in with a floating tremolo. I've never been a big fan of them. I always end up blocking them. So I've always felt that the floating bridge robs a little bit of tone, and the hardtails tend to sound a little bit tighter and resonant to my style of playing at least. So, but that's just subjective. A small headstock, which is based off obviously an early 60s model. And I used to be a big fan of the late 60s, 70s CBS larger headstocks, but not anymore these days. So the medium tint neck. So this pretty much completes the whole aesthetic package of the guitar. So I really love that. So overall, this guitar has really blown my mind. It is everything I ever wished for on a Strat, and feels extra special knowing that I had to say into the parts and components that were used on the build. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit nervous at first, since this was obviously my first time around ordering a custom shop instrument like this one. And even though I got a pretty sweet deal from making music, it was still obviously not a cheap investment. So the wait time ended up being roughly about 8 months. And like I said earlier, the process was super smooth. So I was very happy with that. It almost felt like putting an instrument on layaway. You give the deposit down and you have enough time to save up the rest of the funds and pay it off at the end of the day. So I thought that was pretty cool. So guys, stay tuned for new videos using this guitar. I just really can't express how happy I am with it. And it's a one-of-a-kind instrument, really, and basically it feels like it was just built for me. Okay guys, this is it for the video. Remember to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you're a subscriber, ring that bell to stay notified on future videos, and remember to hit me up on Instagram as well. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you like the guitar? Do you like the color? What do you think of it? I think it's beautiful and I'm super happy with it. So again guys, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys on the next video. Cheers.